Hey everyone, on today's episode of Contractor Growth Network, Alex and I are talking all about the idea of things that you need to practice in your business, which will actually pay dividends in the long run. Check it out. Hey everyone, I'm Logan.
Hey guys, I'm Alex.
And today we are talking all about the idea of really practice. Alex, do me a favor to kick this off. Give me your best Allen Iverson impersonation of we're talking about practice.
We're talking about practice, not the game. Practice.
Beautiful. That was actually pretty good. I'm glad you did it over me. So what we want to talk about with practice is everybody wants to be really good at whatever it is that they do. But nobody actually wants to do the work it takes to get there, right? So I think there's a bodybuilder and his name was, it's Ronnie Coleman.
Ronnie Coleman, yeah.
Ronnie Coleman. And his quote is, everybody wants to be a bodybuilder, but not everybody wants to pick up this heavy ass weight.
Mm-hmm.
Something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to talk about that idea of having to practice what you're doing, because a lot of people, and I see this a lot, sometimes in the CSA, people will do this Contractor Sales Academy where they'll come in and what they want to do is they want to learn how to sell. They want to learn how to communicate properly with clients, but what they're not willing to do is practice with other people in the same boat. So, Alex, how do you perfect something or at least get really good at something without practicing it?
You don't. If you're not gonna, there's only select few, if any, that can pick up something for the first time and be somewhat decent at it. No one's great, but somewhat decent at
it. And that's just if you just have the talent.
Yes, exactly.
And I remember growing up, so like I can be talkative in certain circumstances. I remember growing up and talking to like people's parents, and because I was able to communicate with them, which I guess like some people, like some kids, like when you're younger, like you don't have like the confidence to talk to adults. And I guess, I don't know, maybe I don't know, whatever it was. I remember being told like over and over, like, oh, you'd be really good at sales and this and that. And then I finally put that to the test. And I realized that being talkative in sales is actually a curse.
Mm-hmm.
It's the opposite of what you want. It doesn't help. And the only way to learn that was practicing and learning how to actually sell.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that, let's say, we have these sales teams now here at CGN, instead of showing up in the morning and saying, hey, how many sales do you guys want to make today? Or how many of this do you want to make today? We actually practice. We practice selling to each other. Alex, the Patriots have won how many Super Bowls in the past 20 years?
6, I think.
6.
Yeah.
And whenever you watch the Patriots practice back when they had Brady, how many times do you think they just sit there in a room and talk about the plays that they want to do and just talk about the wins that they want to do and never actually go out to the field to practice it?
Hardly ever. It's all study and then we're doing it out in the field.
So why do businesses want to then study this stuff and talk about it, but then never actually practice it?
I think it's what you said. It's the lack of confidence. And I think it's like a little bit of like pipe dreaming a little bit where they think they can't do it. So they're just like, oh, well, that's only for the super, super successfuls of the world. I'm not up to that yet. I need this, I need that first, and then I'll do it. It's like deflection. We've talked about it before. It's like deflecting it, I think, a little bit.
So, and that's what you brought that up a while ago, where that was like what I think Billie Jean talked about, that where using the excuse of being an introvert. What was the quote? Because I remember you called it out.
Oh, it's like, I don't know the direct quote, but it was something like introverts are just an excuse to be lazy or something like that, or along those lines. But yeah, it's basically like, being an introvert, they think that's like, oh, well, I'll just leave it up to the talkative, like you said, like talkative guy, the extrovert that's going to like, he's going to get the word out there and he'll move the ball for me, but I'm shy, so I don't want to do it. It's, I don't know, something like that.
So, because like when people don't want to practice this stuff, to me, it shows that you're not really valuing it. You're interested in it, but you're not committed to it. So if you sat in the locker room, the Patriots locker room, and they just talked the whole time and never did anything, do you think they would end up winning 6 championships?
No.
Yeah, I remember watching stuff with like Brady where it's like it's the middle of the summer and he's not just like texting, the receivers and stuff like that. He's like, I remember like watching it and it's like their own practices, and Edelman didn't like do an out route appropriately and he yelled at him and was like, that's not like, laziness is not going to win us championships. But you could easily say, look, this is like above and beyond already. The fact that they're just showing up is more, but he was getting yelled at because he didn't make like the right cut.
Yeah. They say a lot in sports teams where it's like a little success can like blow you up. And I think it goes well with the topic where it's like, just because you hit, you're hitting where your original goals were, doesn't mean you just stop learning. I know your dad on the most recent, I think, CSA podcast was saying, you got to learn something every day until you retire, or you're going to fall behind and you're not going to be where you want to be. And with sports teams, you see it all the time. I mean, the Patriots were the Patriots because they never were satisfied. Even after 6 championships, they still got better and still transformed their offense. When you have teams like, you got teams like, the Astros, who just thought they were, hot shit. Then they were like, oh, we'll just do this way because so we don't have to like really learn and practice. We'll just know what pitches come, stuff like that. It's success. Success can last you a lifetime if you put in the hard work and continue to practice on the skills that you've already think you mastered.
And a lot of people, a lot of business owners, they are very good at the craft. Mm-hmm. And it's ironic because they're really good at the craft, and they had to practice it over and over and over. But let's say in the contracting world, like you don't really get to practice building a house 100 times before actually going out and doing it. Mm-hmm. Right? That's like the thing that you're the best at is probably the thing that you're able to have the least amount of practice at. Mm-hmm. But the things that you're probably not like naturally great at, which could be selling, could be customer service, could be communicating with clients, you're able to practice that stuff offline. You can talk to your spouse and say, hey, do me a favor, I've got a customer right now that I pissed off. I want to figure out a right way to make this right. Could you pretend that the scenario is you've called me twice and I haven't picked up, and I just want to practice to see what I can say to try to calm it down. Mm-hmm. And you can do that, quote unquote, in a vacuum, mm-hmm. where there's no outside distractions. You can control what they're going to say, and you get your practice there, and you do that enough. So by the time that you show up and you call that client, you've practiced different scenarios, so you know what to say, and that's going to save your business, not how good could you build this house, which is where you actually have less practice at. So it's a lot of these soft skills that a lot of us like to just skip over, even though we all know that that's what you hire off of. You don't hire off of like, can they build a really good home? Are they a team player? Mm-hmm. Do they have our core values? Stuff like, and then from there, can they build a home? Yes or no? Yeah. But a lot of us, we practice, or we do a lot of the stuff that you're not able to practice like on the job. So if you mess up there, you're in trouble. But we don't then turn around and the stuff that actually makes the business run, because without marketing, you don't have sales. Without sales, you don't actually have a business. Mm-hmm. But we don't practice the marketing and the sales stuff. We just try it out a couple times. If it doesn't work, and we do it live on the client, or we do it live online, and then we're stuck.
Yeah, that's an interesting.
We don't value it, maybe.
That's an interesting take. I never thought of it. Like, you're right. The actual craft, which is what a lot of contractors, they want to do, they have the least amount of practice probably in, because you're right. You can't just practice building a house, but
right.
I think it's a little bit of an ego thing too. Because have you ever done something where you like, I don't need to practice, or I don't need to like, put thought in this, I know I'm good. And then you've come back or you get into a room and you realize, wow, I'm really not that as good as I thought I was, because all these people are better than me. And that's a shitty feeling. And that's kind of like the reality check you need. And as soon as you hit that, then you're like, oh boy, like maybe I do got to put more work into it. Has something like that ever happened to you?
Small talk, like when I go and network.
Yeah.
If it's about business, I can do it, no problem. Mm-hmm. But if it's like a personal thing where I'm like going out with people I don't really know,
Mm-hmm.
what happens with me in those circumstances is I know how to talk business very well because that's my life.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk business, you want to talk sports, I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
But anything outside of that, it's tough for me to engage. And I'm so used to being like the alpha in situations. Like, like I own a company. So it's like and this is going to sound shitty, and I don't want to say the words when I talk, everybody listens, but it's kind of like the role because I'm the owner. So it kind of puts it like on a pedestal. So it's a little bit different. And that's what I'm used to because that's what, you think about it, like I spend more time with you, Alex, than I spend with my girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And you probably spend more time with us than you spend with, so it's like you spend more time with those people that you're around. So you're used to it. And then it's funny because like when I'm with my girlfriend, I'm actually like with her friends and stuff, like I've gotten more comfortable with them now, but like I'm like out of my element.
Yeah.
So if somebody else is talking, and what I find myself is if there's another alpha in the group, I know what it's like where there's two alphas trying to like battle it out and it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
So I will always take the backseat role and let them have it. And then I get, look, why don't you talk? Like, why aren't you saying anything? And I'm like, I have nothing to add to this. Like, I've never seen The Bachelor.
Yeah.
So I like, what do you want me to add? Like, you want me to just, and she's like, well, just, every so often engage. So I've gotten to the point now, because like, and we didn't practice, but if two people are talking about The Bachelor, every so often I'll chime in and be like, yeah, he is a dick. And then like, I get back to quiet again.
Yeah.
So it's like stuff like that. So I'll kind of jump in, but that's something that you bring it, like, now I'm thinking about, like, that would actually be something very good to like practice, like practice having these topics. And have you ever seen, it was on Netflix, it came out during the pandemic. There was a show called Love on the Spectrum.
Love on, no, was it about autistic love or something like that?
Yep.
I heard
There
that.
was,
I never saw it though.
it was very good. I would highly suggest it. It was very good. But the premise of it was they took these, there were probably 5 or 6 of them, and they were millennials, anywhere from 20 to 30. And they're teaching these kids that have autism how to date.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have autism, the social cues are off. So what they were doing was they were practicing small talk, because like this one guy would show up and he was able to talk and have a conversation, but they were talking about you should never ask a question without having a couple follow-up questions with it, because what they were finding, and they would bring in like a dating coach specific to, helping people with special needs date.
Mm-hmm.
And what they would do is they would ask kind of like a yes or no question and then just move on. And they were practicing that. So like, Alex, just give me a yes or no question to these questions, okay? Or a yes or no answer. So it would be like, so Alex, do you live with your parents?
No.
Do you have a job, Alex?
Yes.
Nice. Do you like sports?
Yes.
Okay. What's your favorite season?
Fall.
And that would be it. Like, and they would, and the coach would then say, look, when you ask like a question like this, and then you don't have follow-up questions, how fast is that conversation? And they're like, oh yeah, I see what you're saying. So they would practice the small talk.
Yeah. That's interesting.
So yeah, it was this whole thing of like, and there's certain things that I think a lot of people, they don't think you need to practice it. So like for me, now that we're saying it, I'm like having like this mini epiphany over here of like, that would actually be something very beneficial to me to like get better at this, because there's, a business thing, I can small talk all day long because, I get it. Like I get what's going on. But if it's, like just a personal thing, we're out to dinner and there's like conversations of like something else going on, like I don't know how to interject because I don't have anything to add. And I don't want to be the person that just is like, yeah, totally got it. That makes sense.
Yeah. It's interesting because especially when you get older, you realize the things that you're like, yeah, I do have to prepare for this. Like for me, if I'm going on a date, I already have like, questions, easy questions, but like prepared that I'm going to ask. Because there's nothing worse than like you're going and you have nothing to say right off the bat. It's already awkward to begin with. Mm-hmm. So yeah, small talk is big too. It's big when like for me, since I don't own anything, so for me it's like I'm more of just I'll ask questions and then let it sink in to like, if there's people like, supervisors, managers, up in that region. But then it's like, I don't know, I just take a look at knowledge, and then it's always like that, you never want to like answer someone with, oh yeah, I did this back in this. It's like trying to put it back on yourself. I'm very self-conscious of that now, to where I'm like practicing like with conversations, like, okay, I'm not gonna, with like friends and people, it's like, all right, ask more about them, not yourself.
And all this stuff, it's all learnable.
Yeah.
How do you do customer service? It's not a thing that you either are born with it or not, and that's it. Same with sales, same with leadership.
Mhm.
Like, these are all things that you can learn and study and then practice. Like, Tom Brady didn't come out of the womb knowing how to throw a football. He learned it, he studied it, and then he practices it. So that's like really like the full spectrum of figure out how somebody's doing it or how to do it, and then practice this shit. Like, we're doing this right now with all this cold calling stuff that we're doing, and we're like getting hung up on it over and over and over. And we're like, okay, this isn't working. Let's figure out how somebody else did it. So we bought a course on how to do it. And then we say, great. We went through it all together. And then we practiced together of like using different opening lines to not get hung up on.
Yeah. But you've said this to me, I think, before in the past, where it's like the best decision you made was realizing that you can accept others' help. And that's why you've been really big into courses. And I think that like there's like 2 or 3 character traits I think you really need. And it's self-awareness, it's be able to check your ego. And then like 2A is basically off the same thing. It's like willing to learn, because once you check your ego, then you're willing to open up your mind to learn. And for me, I'm only 24, but like that year and a half, 2 years out of college, you're on such a pedestal that you think you know everything because you got a degree. That's what they brainwash it in your head to like, you think that way. But then once you get off that, you're like, wow, there's so much more learning opportunity. And it's a great feeling. And I assume it's the same with business owners that have been in business for 15, 20, 30 years, where it's like, oh, I know everything. I've been around the block, but there's a whole new avenue, especially in 2020, where you have there's probably so much potential to learn from that.
Yeah. And it's the teaching an old dog new tricks. There's a lot of people out there that they just want to be stuck, not stuck in, I mean, it is stuck. You're stuck in your own ways. And unfortunately, with the people like, okay, like Todd Tribble, painter up in Ann Arbor, he's just a student. Like,
he seems like the guy who wants to be a savant in every like everything he touches, basically. He
does and he doesn't. Like, the way that I look at him is he wants to understand the fundamentals of it, but he doesn't necessarily want to set up all the Facebook ads, but just a general understanding of like what's going on.
Yeah.
And that's candidly like the best way to be, because it's like, I don't want to do my own books. I don't want to do my own taxes, but I do need to understand the fundamentals of money in, money out. And is this tax deductible or not? Because if I totally did, and I've turned people away that are like, I don't want to do any marketing. I want you to handle it all for me. I just want it to work. And I'm like, we don't do that. Like, there's certain aspects that you need to do in-house, because we can do it, but it's not going to do anything. And I don't want you to get mad at me. And I know you're going to get mad at me because it's not doing anything.
Yeah.
So I'm not doing that. And they're like, well, then we're out. I'm like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
Go with them. That's cool. But yeah.
Yeah. It's a recipe for disaster at that point. Cause it's right. I mean, to get it back to like the practice, they're not practiced. They're refusing to practice because they don't know it. They don't want to know it. So they're like, oh, I don't need to, I'll just hire somebody else. But then how do you know if doing a good job, if you're not seeing the immediate results and you don't realize that it's a longer play, or it's this type of thing you're not looking at, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm talking about, the self-awareness, to realize like, I don't know it. I don't necessarily want to know everything, but like you said with Todd, let me know the basics so I can read how you're doing, basically.
Yeah. And because that's what I think a lot of happens a lot of times with a lot of contracting companies, is that they get told by a marketing company, hey, this is how, hey, we're going to get you a bunch of leads. And they go, okay, great, let's do it. And then down the road, the marketing company has done nothing to actually say, just so you know, this is how it works. Step 1 is this, step 2 is this. And then by step 4, you should start to see the results of it. The marketing company sucks at explaining that, so they skip it. Then the contractor goes, well, what the hell? I'm not getting any leads. And the marketing company goes, oh yeah, well, it's going to take time. But because they didn't set the upfront expectation, They don't know anything. But then on the flip side, the contractor could very easily spend a couple hours understanding just the basics of, and we actually just did a video on this. It was like a 6-minute video that just talks about like getting in front of your ideal client at all 3 stages of, they don't even know that you exist is level 1. Level 2 is they're interested. And level 3 is they're ready to hire somebody. And it's like, if you can hit them at all 3 stages, you're good. And it wasn't that in depth of a topic, but it just kind of gives an overview of everything. So if you don't want to practice this stuff, that's fine, but at least study it a little bit. And then if you're going to outsource it, somebody else who has already practiced it will be doing it. But if you're going to do this stuff on your own, it's going to be very tough to master anything if you refuse to ever practice. I mean, this is why in school you have homework. You don't just like watch on the board the math teacher do calculus and then they go, okay, great, here's the quiz.
Yeah.
And back in then, the quiz was pass fail. In this day and age, if you don't make a sale and you fail the sale, you don't have any food on the table for your family. So the stakes are way higher, yet we're practicing way less because it takes a little bit of discipline. But I don't even necessarily think it takes discipline. I think it just takes, you need to see the light. You need to understand the benefit of being good at selling, the benefit of being good at customer service, or whatever it is that you want to get better at. And then once you see the light and you understand the benefits behind it, that's when it's like, well, I'm okay with practicing this.
Yeah. Well, it's like, it all ties in. I mean, all of our topics tie in together. So like, I know a couple of weeks ago, we talked about taking yourself out of the field and putting yourself in that owner mentality where you're not thinking about how am I going to draw out this pond. You're thinking, how do I make this pond into 40 and have 10 crews? You know what I mean? It's the same mindset you have to have with the practice. You've already gotten to the point where you're good at this craft because you have a sustainable business. Now let's get good at making more money, growing, marketing online, stuff like that. It's a different style. And the people that don't want to get out of the field don't want to learn that, don't want to do it that way. And that's how they all intertwine. And it's the practice where it's scary. But like, you look at Derek. I mean, we always talk about Derek. The CSA always talks about Derek, and he was one of the contractors we're speaking to. And now he's literally a wordsmith. He can say anything. He can sell you anything. He could sell, I don't know, water to the Pope, something like that. He's amazing. And all it took was practice. That's all it took.
He did a lot of practice really fast. He totally, it's like when you learn a language, you could sit there here and just, read a textbook, or you can go to Spain and just totally immerse yourself in it, which is what he did. And they have a lot of those, like they have programs out there. They're called like design sprints or marketing sprints or whatever it is. But what you'll do is there'll be like a company that will facilitate this endeavor. So let's say, for example, you want to launch a brand new contracting company and you need to figure out how to market it. You can hire a company that will say, okay, great, let's work through this together. Let's spend 6 hours and we're going to facilitate it. And we're going to ask you all these questions. And what they're doing is they're effectively allowing you to play out a dozen different scenarios of how to market your company and figure out which way is actually going to work. Now, at the end of the day, you got to actually go out there and test it and figure it out, but they're facilitating this so they let you think through everything together. So they have those in place, but again, you just have to like have the mindset that you don't have all the answers up front. Like you might have the desire, but you don't actually have the tactics that it takes or the skill that it takes. And I know, like for me, like with all the selling stuff, like I've done like well over 400 role plays with contractors. And that's one of the things that was funny when we were hiring the sales reps. The way that they're set up is they're appointment setters, right? They're called specialists, but they effectively set up an appointment. They are the not first line of defense, but they really just talk to whoever it is that needs help and figure out 3 things. 1, where are they at right now? 2, where are they trying to get to? And 3, how do they plan on getting there? And there's more to it. So, with where they're at, like, what got you here, what's working, what's not working, stuff like that. Where do you want to get to is more like, how bad do you want to get there? Like, is this an interest or is this a commitment for you? And then how do you plan on getting there? Is there something in their head where they're like, I definitely need to do this one thing? and this is going to get me there. So what they're effectively trying to find out is, how serious are you? Are we a good fit for you based on your industry? They're just trying to understand what's going on. And then if it makes sense and it's a problem that we're able to solve, because a lot of times they have a problem that we can't solve.
Yeah.
Then at that point they say, great, I can refer you out to somebody else. But if it's a problem that we can solve, they send them over to me. And I remember like with talking to some of these kids and the way that, they're not kids, I'm sorry. Like some of them are younger. And I got pictured one guy who was like 18, and that's why I said kids, they're not kids. I remember like one of them during this, because they're compensated based on if I end up closing them, and if the client moves forward, then they, because they're the one that set the appointment, get paid. And I remember one of the guys was like, well, how do we know that you're able to actually like, close these people? Like, what's your sales background? And I remember just thinking like, you just bought a course, you went through it and you got quote unquote certified. Like, how many role plays have you done? I did 4 a couple months ago and then 2 last week. I'm like, okay, you've done 6 practice role plays ever. And I'm going to assume it's with other people in this group who are other people trying to learn how to sell. So it's kind of the blind leading the blind. And you're dogging me and questioning me. And I've done hundreds.
Yeah.
With our ideal client and gotten feedback from our ideal client. But you have more confidence in yourself because you went through a course and you have 6 under your belt compared to me having 400 under my belt with exactly who we sell to.
Yeah.
So it's that mentality, and it's great. I love the confidence, but it's a bit of humble pie. Hey, look, I get it. If I was coming to you and you had, like if the roles were reversed and I came to you and said, I got, 400 role plays under my belt with our ideal client and you only had 6, but you're the owner, like, okay, like it makes a little bit of sense that maybe I feel confident in myself. But like with these people coming in, I'm like, you haven't even practiced this, like, let alone practice it with exactly the scenario. So like if you're a contractor and you're predominantly interacting with, let's say, the wife, because that's like typically with our clientele who initially calls them, who they have the most interaction with is the wife. You need to be practicing talking to the wife, quote unquote. But if you're only practicing with grumpy old men who have a completely different personality than who you're actually interacting with, it doesn't really make sense.
It reminds me of the Office skit where Dwight can't sell to girls because he's aggressive. That's how you talk to males. That's how you close with males. So all the ladies in the office teach him how to talk to women. It's the same thing with what you're saying. I mean, yeah, like a guy has 6 role plays, but they're all with guys that have 6 role plays. So they all think they're doing a great job, but it's until you get, try role playing with you with 400, and then you'll get the learning experience and that piece of humble pie. And it's also, I don't really know how it gets set up, but that's also, he's confident. So he doesn't want to get knocked off the pedestal by role playing with someone that has a lot more. It's going to challenge him. And that's a character flaw that he needs to get knocked off the pedestal, and then he'll learn. And it's really just accepting that it's going to take practice. You'll get better, and just willing to do it. Not saying, oh, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. But you're wasting time by refusing to change that process that's going to save you time, So.
And let's say let's say you're a carpenter, like the first time that, or like a home builder, the first time you build a home, is that going to be a masterpiece? No.
Probably your worst home you build.
Yeah, it is. But we all when it comes to content, we all like shoot one video. We do 30 different takes of it, and we finally post it. And then we go, well, nobody bought anything. Maybe the video stuff isn't for me. Maybe it doesn't work. But we forget that you have to do a ton of practice. And with content, what I will say is this is, if you practice just internally, where you just stand in front of a camera and practice 30 times in a row, and you finally post one thing, that's actually going to hurt you. So this is one of the situations that you just need to start posting this stuff live, and just understand that the person who cares the most about your mistakes and your mess up is you.
Yeah.
Nobody else really cares.
It's like, don't practice on the wrong thing. That's what you're saying. You're practicing on Yeah, you just practice posting it out and getting it out there.
Yeah.
Don't practice just recording it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's like, so in that circumstance, you definitely just want to get it out. But a lot of people will like, well, I'll just practice selling on real customers and get feedback from them. Like, okay, imagine, okay, Alex, like, so I didn't sell you right there. So where did I mess up?
Yeah, you're not gonna get that feedback.
Yeah, what are they gonna say? Like, oh, you know what, man? Like at this one point, if you would have said this, you would have nailed it, and I would have bought everything from you.
It's like going right into the stock market with $100,000 instead of like slowly going in with like $5, $20, $100, or you want to play with monopoly money if you know nothing, and then work your way up to it. But Grant Cardone had this thing on LinkedIn today. I saw it. It was like, if something doesn't work, just change it a little bit and then try again. And it's the same thing you were saying with content, that people like, oh, it didn't work. I did 3 videos, it didn't work. Or I started a podcast, nobody listened to the first 5. It's like, well, no one knows you're out there. It's just change something a little bit and see if that works. Change this, practice this, could do this. It's the repetition, the practice. Just keep plugging along and truly believe in that. And this is the way to go in the end goal. And if it's not, hey, maybe some things aren't meant to be for you, but just just keep doing it, keep going.
And everybody, I mean, even Tom Brady, like he's going to have, like, he's a little bit more, football minded. He's got the right stature minus his run game.
Mm-hmm.
Like someone like me, like very, very, very slim chance I would have ever, even if I trained super hard, would have made it into the NFL because I'm 5'8.5".
Mm-hmm.
Like shortest quarterback is Russell Wilson at like 5'10".
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's even a stretch. And he like practiced a lot. So it's, there are going to be people that have a certain way about them, that they have like this natural talent that makes them a little bit more prone to this. Like if you're in sales and you have like a very, very heavy stutter, it's going to be tougher for you. But at the same time, Tom Brady didn't get to the place that he is by just sheer talent. He practiced a shitload. So all the people out there that you look up to, it's not like they naturally just boom, they did it. Every single person was in your shoes at one point. Now, how fast did they learn it might be a little bit different, where if it takes you a month, maybe it took them 3 weeks, but they still put in a ton of effort to get to that place. And the same thing with these businesses that you look at that are doing very well. It's not because they are just, they're such a busy business savvy person that they naturally created a $30 million company in 2 years. It's because they just practiced and failed until they finally figured out what works and just push that. So you're able to do it. It's just, you got to study it, what people do. Then you got to actually practice this stuff. And if you're able to practice it in a vacuum behind the scenes over and over and over, it goes from your conscious to your subconscious mind, where, when you're doing, like breathing, like, do you actively think about breathing? No. But do you actively think about what you're about to say on this, to whatever I'm saying right now? So the more that you practice this stuff, the more it just becomes ingrained in you. And like the way that I sell, like I learned how to ask open-ended questions, or I learned to never say the word, to never ask why, but instead to frame it as what or how. And because I've done hundreds of these, I now say that in my regular conversations, and I don't think about it. It just naturally comes out. Where if you say like, hey, I'm coming over at 5, instead of being like, why are you coming over at 5? I'd be like, okay, like, what makes you want to come over at 5? Like that's a kind of a bad example, but like it's shifting how you ask stuff, so you don't feel like you're cornering somebody. But in the game of sales, it's already hard enough to know what to say. Because everybody's especially when you start, like you're talking and I'm sitting here like thinking like, oh my God, I gotta like write down everything that he says. And then if you say something that I know I want to ask a question to at the beginning of your statement, I'm going to forget about everything that you just said after that one thing. And now all I'm doing is focusing on responding to that question. And that's like where you start with sales. But once you get good at it, because you practice it, you're able to listen to the whole thing, take a deep breath, and then tap into your subconscious to go, boom, let me fire back the right answer or the right response. And on top of that, if I wanted to ask a why question, because I've practiced it enough, I can now ask a what or a how question.
I can already see an objection coming up where it's going to be, oh, but I wasn't a good learner in school. I'm just not a good fast learner. So I don't want to take all the time. It's different type of learning. In school, we always talk about, oh, if this is something I'm interested in, I'd learn it in a second, or I'd read the book in a second. In school, it's so far away, like from what you're going to do and when you're going to apply it, that that's where that mindset comes from. In this could be hundreds of thousands of dollars difference by learning how to sell or learning how to do online marketing, something like that, and practicing that. That's like real dollars and cents, and that's immediate impact. Like that is something you can learn, and you'll be interested in it because it's your business. And if you were such a bad, or I don't know, a bad learner, not a quick learner, you wouldn't have started the business anyway. You already made that jump to be a business owner, so you're already there, and you've already, climbed over the odds that you had in your head before because you weren't good at school. So it's different types of learning, and it's the better learning, and the learning we wish we all can grow up with to do, because it's something that's going to impact us the next day if we put the effort in.
One of the guys that that runs like this massive company that I like buy into their programs, he said he would grow up, and there's a he's an author, his name is John Maxwell, but he's kind of like a Tony Robbins, like a mental, like how to play the game, how to, kind of like a life coach type deal. And he said growing up, his dad would make him go to these seminars with him. Mm-hmm. And he's like 11 years old. And at 11 years old, like, would you want to go to a Tony Robbins event at 11 years old? No. Because that shit is like, why are people jumping? This makes no sense. Like, why don't they just call their sister? Like, why is she crying about it? Right. Like stuff like that. You don't realize the problems. But he said the reason he would go is because his dad would say, if you go with me, I'll get you Chick-fil-A on the way home. Well, fast forward 15 years. And all those lessons and all those teachings and practices that he would do at these things with his dad that he thought was stupid at the time, well, now it's all coming back. Now it's all starting to make sense. Mm-hmm. So he's in the practice of it, and because he did it so much at a younger age, it's now just kind of part of his DNA. So imagine growing up in school where they teach you self-confidence.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm watching this show on Hulu right now. I watched with Audrey last night, and it's called Pen 15. Have you ever heard of it? That show?
No.
Okay. You know what Pen 15? Like, was that a thing at your middle school? Okay, so Pen 15 is PEN 15. If you write it out on something, it looks like penis.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
I know that. Yeah.
That's the premise. That's the title of the show, but it's all about. It's funny as hell. It's these two girls who are like 33 years old, so a little bit older than me, and it's them being back in middle school. So everybody else in the show is a kid, except for them, and they like dress like kids, but they're actually 33. And they bring up all the stuff that I remember doing in middle school. And man, middle school is brutal. Mm-hmm. And that is like your formidable years. Mm-hmm. But it is like they're making, like, they called one girl like the UGIS, and that stands for ugliest girl in school.
Oh my God.
But I mean, like, that's middle school. But imagine instead of them teaching you math, where you have to practice math, imagine they taught you self-esteem and confidence and like affirmations, and you practice that for 50 minutes a day versus practicing, knowing when or like how long like an aardvark's nose is. Like, you never use that, but if you could like have all this beneficial stuff that you practice, that's when you take it from, it becomes like you're actively having to think about it into this is just second nature for me. And man, like, that's one of those things that, like, if you could have confidence like growing up and you practice that, like, it's game over. You'll always be happy. Yeah,
exactly. And I think confidence and self-awareness are two of the most important characteristics you can have, because if you're self-aware enough, you'll learn where that line of cockiness and confidence comes, and then you'll be able to, unstoppable basically, because you'll realize, all right, I need to get confidence in this area of the business, and it's a lethal combination.
Just all practice. So anything else to add about practice?
No, I think we've practiced enough on this one.
That's true. I remember this first podcast that we were like, they're hard. Like, it's not easy at first, but then now we're at like, I don't know, 100 or something like that. So or more, like way more.
We're almost at 200. Yeah.
So it's like, we just get, it's now second nature. So if you guys would do us a favor, practice dropping us a review, please. Like, that lets us know how we're doing, but it really does help out a lot. Because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to be able to get larger people on the podcast that are like, that know more and bring you more stuff. But the way that they actually vet who they go on podcast with is how many reviews does that person have? Who else have they brought on the podcast? So if you wouldn't mind leaving us a review, just you like it, you don't like it, doesn't matter what it is. That's how they vet which ones they want to go on. And if I think at this point, last time I checked, we're like 25 or 30, like you need to be at a certain number for the big dogs to come in. So do us a favor, if you don't mind, please right now or whenever you get to the next light, leave us a review, let us know how we're doing, and that way we're able to get on more people and then keep expanding your mind. So guys, thank you very much.